Hello, welcome back. Good morning. Welcome to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, master of the ship, with bosun John, and at this point, kind of in a dinghy hanging off the rear, Justin. Hello, everybody. So Quindy, any baby news? Like, do we have a name yet? I said he's in a dinghy hanging off the rear of the ship. Quindy is our master and commander, and John's our bosun. I could call Justin a dinghy if I want to, and he'll agree with me. Not yet. Does that mean there's being discussions? Dinghy Justin. Yep, I can call Justin dinghy. We worked together for long enough, folks. You get certain rights, certain unalienable rights. Alrighty. Speaking of rights and righty and alrighty, we have a Centaur. He's a spifftastic Centaur. I was just thinking I need to figure out where I put my big bases. I have them around here somewhere. I know they're in something. Progress, right? I know kind of where they should be. Organization, it's optional. So yeah, but I was thinking we'd do some basing on this guy. He definitely needs, he could use a bigger base for sure. I have to kind of look at what's on his base. He has little tree roots and some leaves and stuff. Little pieces of wood and ground cover. Little leaves. Well, that's interesting, because we could go, I'll think about this. He's not up on necessarily elevation, but we could probably do something to raise him up a little bit. When you use a bigger base than a model, by the way, one that's significantly bigger like this, where it's almost as wide as he is, actually it is about as wide as he is. When you do this, you need to usually raise up the figure a bit. Otherwise, what it comes off as is this little model on a big base, as you can see. And that is, like, ridiculously boring. Like, visually, it kind of leaves people flat. You never want to leave people flat when you've spent all this time painting an awesome model, especially if it's like your big boss monster. Even if it's not, even if it's a display, or if you just put a lot of time into it. You want people to go, oh, that's cool. So when you use, he looks really dynamic right now, partially because he is on a smaller base. So if you throw a big base under that small base, now you've essentially, like, reduced his dynamic. Like, he's no longer as dynamic. He's a lot more boring. He's like, you know, solidly on this huge paddle of basing. So in order to counteract that, what you want to do is you want to raise the figure up a little bit, give him some elevation, then that instantly makes him look more impressive. So if we were to use a base like this instead of something smaller that would fit this base, we would want to raise the figure up just a little bit, sideways basing lesson there. Most of the time, Krinika, I'm actually a lot more organized than that because I hate not being able to find crap when I want it. But, and also having moved recently, I kind of slimmed down my stuff, so I'm not nearly as bad as I used to be as far as just having a bunch of crap around. So with that said, bases are one of those things where I'm just like, I think it's in this drawer over here. All right, so we started kind of highlighting and shading our bronze before. The things we have left to do. I should probably start my my list now. Alrighty. Now, actually, I was looking for a model to do some basing lessons on for my Patreon, so I may actually just, like, finish this guy and then just put him off to the side and finish him on the Patreon, which is, you know, something I haven't really done before, but I reserve the right not to finish basing on a model sometimes on stream if it's repetitive. We'll see. I haven't considered it yet. I kind of want to get to one of those Jason Weeby models, one of the scions of elemental power. So we'll see what I do. They all looked better. Yeah, and of course, tactical rocks. And of course, in that game, if any piece of you is sticking out, it's fair game for shooting. Yeah, I could see why. Yeah, well, that's pretty awesome, actually, Carnico. Alrighty, so let's see. I've got to do leather straps. Highlighting. I've got to do wood on spear highlighting. I need to highlight gold, bronze, and MM. I need to paint silver and MM, paint steel and MM. Same thing. Really the same thing. Let's see here. Other than that, and paint facial hair and crest, I think. That's about it. And finish eyes. There. So when you get close to the end of a model that's very involved and has lots of pieces on it, you may want to make a happy list so that you don't forget things, because otherwise you tend to. I speak from experience. Alrighty, and I'm going to leave basing as a big question mark right now, because I'm not sure what I want to do, and I'm not sure where I'm going to do it. And I kind of want to like switch topics. So, because although I like this Centaur, I've been working on him a long time, so I'm just kind of like, you know how you get sometimes. Oh no. There we go. Just for a minute, it looked as if I'd actually left paint in a brush yesterday, and I was like, what? This is nothing I ever do, but actually it's not. Good deal. Excellent. Alrighty. Let's finish out like some of this NMM. Like the brown stuff really just needs a highlight. A couple of highlights to look good, and then we can work on the silver, the blades here. The axe blade actually and the spear blade are both fairly simple designs. You can even see the light coming in from the window here, so you can see where the highlights go on this axe right there, which is kind of nice about the bones material. It does have a little bit of a sheen, so if you are planning NMM, you can actually kind of see where your highlights should go. So we'll talk about that. So let's just get a quick highlight on some of this bronze. I think I'm going to use polished leather, drop some white into it, and then use pure white. I think we'll do that. Oh no, I'm so sorry you have COVID, Jezion. Very, very sorry. Here, I'll show you. You probably missed the cutes. Hold on, where's my... I have a cute from yesterday. No cutes from today. Although I did watch my new puppy segment. Hold on. The cutest cute. There, the cutest cute. So cute. They're finally old enough that their eyes are opening, and when their eyes open, they start trying to play with each other, except mostly they're trying to like lunge into each other and fall over. And then they try to just eat each other. Like their first, yes, puppy puddle. Their first actions as of their eyes opening are like trying to toddle into their litter mates and nom on them. That's kind of what happens. So they're really cute at this age. In another couple days, they should be walking enough that Bridget can send a photo. That and the puppy pudge. Here, have a puppy pudge. Pudgy pupple. Very much pudge with a little otter tail. And they also are starting to, like before, they would unconsciously wag their tails when they nurse, but now they're actually starting to use tail wagging as a gestural component. So at this age, between 2 and 3 weeks, is when puppies get more of like they start to identify, like realize themselves. Right, their brain is big enough then and awake enough that they're starting to like get their individual identities. So this is like awesome, exciting time when you start to see their little personalities peep out. So it's super exciting for me because that's what I'm most interested in is personality, temperament. Yeah, they are precious at this age. It's not my favorite age. My favorite age is 4 weeks, Staz. Because it's like 4 weeks, Shiloh puppies are just little bundles of fluff and they bounce. They don't know how to like trot yet. So they bunny hop everywhere and it's ridiculous. Yeah, the Sheba stream sounds like it's about the same age as my litter. So yeah, we're doing a thing called puppy culture, which is a pretty intense socialization dynamic. So what Bridget has started to do now, do we have pictures? First of all, she started taking the puppies out of the pen for one-on-one time with her exploring a blanket right next to her, so it's not disorienting. 2, she started putting toys in the pen now that puppies can see them and start to interact with things that aren't their mom or litter mates. And 3, she started putting different footing into the pen. So she introduced some rubber mats. She introduced like some springy like doormat type material. Yeah, and then they just roll around because they lose their feet. Yeah, they're cute. But yeah, so all these things are something that a good breeder does to kind of give the puppies, to start them understanding that different things aren't scary. And it's something you can start as early as like 2.5 weeks, which is astounding, really, if you think about it. Not as astounding as a newborn foal being like able to run with their mom like 2 minutes after they're born, or 1 minute. I don't remember. It's something insane. But puppies need a little extra development time, just like humans. Yeah, we do very, Bridget goes whole hog into the responsible socialization. Bridget wants to give her puppies the best possible start because, you know, once they go to new homes, we really can't do anything except kind of support and help from a distance. But everything that, when we have the puppy in our hands, we can do a lot to help their future success. And a good breeder will know that and will try to give their puppy the best start so you get the best lump of clay, as I put it, because every puppy is a lump of clay with certain attributes. And then you the owner, you the new puppy mom or dad, shape that clay. Every dog is an individual, just like every person. That's why I'm just so excited to see who these puppies are, personality-wise. All right, so I've got some. When you put white into polished leather, it turns a yellow color. Very nice, actually, gold color. Yeah, you can prepare a puppy for that by giving them these early. That's what these early socialization things are trying to do. Is essentially you're sneaking in. There's a time during puppy development where you're sneaking in ahead of that fear period, as they call them. It's essentially a sensitization period. It's kind of like when wolf cubs leave the den and for a while they just play because they don't realize that there's a bigger world out there, but then they do realize and they need that instinct to protect them, to understand that the world is dangerous. Dogs don't need that instinct, but they still have it. And so that's what the fear period is. But the more you can get them accustomed to new experiences when they're babies, the less profound that shift should be. And again, it depends on the puppy. Alrighty, so there's our colors. I wanted to lighten that up. Yeah, that can happen, Korniko. It's sad. I wish that all breeders understood this, but, you know, there's really no way to know. Like, there are online, like, you can find resources online. But a lot of people who just kind of have an oops litter or who are just, like, you know, breeding for whatever, they just don't understand how much impact they can have. It's also a lot of work, though. Yeah, the balance disc is pretty standard, and Bridget's going to be using that. It's a very standard in puppy culture. Any performance home. I did a puppy evaluation that was doing that. The breeding was between a Whippet and a Border Collie. And Border Whippets, or whatever they call them, are really popular in agility. Like, they're very good at fly ball agility, disc dog, all that sort of thing. So the breeders actually do breed that mix. And most of them will have a balance board in their puppy's environment, because it's like a key thing in agility, right? So, yeah. Yeah, it helps if you know some dog body language when you're adopting from a shelter. Like, if you're able to read when a puppy is uncomfortable or a puppy is confident. Like, it's easy. When I was a noob, it's so easy to mistake a puppy that's actually, how do I say, kind of assertive, fearful, for one that's really confident. Like, a puppy may be like, may run up to you and be crawling all over you and crawling under you, and you may think, wow, this puppy's really outgoing and confident. But in reality, that can be a fear response. You just don't know it until you learn to speak dog a little more. I highly recommend learning to speak dog. David's lucky, because I'm going to be like teaching him how to speak dog from the ground level. All right, so the more of a hard highlight we put in, the more shiny this looks. Yeah, Border Whippet, pretty much. Some of them were more or less active, just like every breed. You know, you've got Whippets definitely have an off switch. Border Collies sometimes don't. So yeah, I mean, it is a high energy, high drive breed, and you definitely wouldn't want one unless you were doing stuff with your dog, for sure. I'm gonna make this a little bit softer as far as I'm gonna add some water to it. I'm also going to mix up some rich leather so I can add a little bit of a transition. I don't know that I necessarily want that to be quite so mirrored. Yeah, the zoomies are a real thing. But both of these, the Border Collie and the Whippet Parrot, were both pretty well-behaved, nice, balanced dogs. They weren't too hyper. But yeah, when called upon, these puppies are like rockets. They're adorbs, though. Pretty adorbs. Yeah, I always liked Border Collies, but they're too much for me. They're too much dog. They're too much instinct for me. There are things that you have to watch out for behaviorally when you're raising a Border Collie that you don't have to worry about with any other breed. Except maybe Corgis. And other strong herding breed instinct dogs. Oh, Husky Chow mixes, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's always... I guess I could see, like, how the appearance would appeal to people. But yeah, I don't know if it's a weird mix. It's a really independent mix, right? That Husky Chow. I'm sure they're beautiful dogs. But just because you can do a mix doesn't mean you should do a mix. Sometimes I think people breed dogs together too, and they just don't think about, like, what will this combo actually give me? Like, they're like thinking about the appearance, right? But they're now thinking about the temperament. So I'm going to put a little bit of just little pinpoint highlights up here on the top. And then I'm going to bring up my highlights more toward the bottom of the piece. Just a little bit. I got a little bit low on my shadows here. So on elaborate filigree bits, you really want to just generalize. You shouldn't ever concern yourself with realism on something like this. And the only thing you need... Yeah, why not just get a Malamute? Yeah, same level of independence, yep. Yeah. I heard about a corgi nightmare at David's mom's birthday party. The corgi of doom I've taken to calling the dog. Cute as a button, but absolutely no training for the first 8 or 9 months because his mom's just really permissive, and his dad just, you know, the dog was more the mom's. So, oh my gosh. So their daughter is dealing with it because she knows how to speak dog. But oh my gosh. Oof. All right, so all you need are 3 components here to make this look shiny. It does everything you wouldn't want it to do, Jess. It's a nightmare. It's okay. It's a high drive, high energy corgi that is living with two people in their 70s who have had corgis their whole life, but their other corgis are not high drive, high energy corgis. The corgi of doom, yes. Kind of like a toddler in a Medzi. Exactly like a toddler, actually, because at 8 or 9 months, it's just learned it can do anything. And that its people won't, it just has zero training. Like zero, sit, stay, come, just never really trained it. And with a dog that smart, oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he just, like, I forget his name, his actual name. We'll just call him the Corgi of Doom. But he just, like, has no, like, essentially he's too much dog for his owners. He's too much dog. If I were the breeder, I would not have placed a puppy that energetic with elderly people. And I say that as somebody who was getting older herself. The thing is that sometimes you can handle it, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes it sneaks up on you, is what I've found. Like, I can't do all the things I used to do. I can't just move myself cross country anymore. I'd break myself, But what I find is with some of my older friends, and they've talked to me about this, is they've been raising dogs all their lives. So they just think about getting a new puppy, and they forget that, much like myself, they haven't raised a baby puppy for like over a decade. They've forgotten how much energy a young dog has, right? How much energy, how much training it takes, how much work it takes, how much bending over it takes. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, puppies are toddlers on their own. They're just babies. They're just like more accelerated babies, right? I was telling David this. I'm like, this is going to be like having a baby, except that we only have to worry about it for a year instead of 18, and then it's going to be more or less solid. But yeah, you forget that you haven't dealt with that level of energy and commitment for a long time, and it can be overwhelming, and it can really drain you. And I mean, I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm like, yeah, this is definitely like, but I don't know how many more puppies I'm going to be able to to handle in my life. Oh man, having only one is going to be nice though. So anyway, some of my older friends have ended up like rehoming dogs with relatives and stuff because they realized that they just couldn't really handle it. Not to the level, especially with a big dog, right? At least this is a corgi. So it's what, 20, 30 pounds, 35-pound max? I don't remember. Yeah, exactly. David could lift Kiri, but I couldn't. Unless it was an emergency, then I could, but I'm glad that I didn't send my back into spasms. Luckily, this dog being outcrossed, this puppy should be a little smaller. All right, so what we've got here, straight up NMM, simple. Whenever you're doing anything that's all fiddly and riddly and you're like, oh my gosh, what? Just paint it as if it's a big space of normal metal and just make sure you have the 3 components of NMM. The highest highlight here, the shadow underneath, and whatever color you're using, and then the under reflection, which is bounced light coming back up at the blade or the metal surface from the environment. And that's going to be on the underside usually. Unless you've got like a spear that's tilted up against a wall. So like if you had a spear that was like this, you'd still probably have a highlight on the upper surface because the light would still be dropping. And you'd have like a reflection underneath, but you might have a heavier reflection down here. If it was the other way and the spear was leaning up against the wall this way, where it was actually leaning and the ground is down here, you'd see it reverse. You'd see the bounce light coming off the wall and hitting here, and your main highlight would be on the opposite side because you've had your light coming down like this. So, yeah, you're strong on it, Red Links. Good job. I switched to Papillons. Wow. Yeah, that would be so stressful and really, really kind of triggering, right, Crowley? That Yep. Yeah, I could see how that would have been extremely distress-inducing. I freaked out enough when Kiri couldn't make it up the stairs in our old apartment, and at least I had David to call, right? That was my comfort, is at least I had a David, and he could come and lift her. He's much stronger than I am, upper body-wise. There we go. So I'm gonna bring in a little bit of shadow and kind of delineate this this metal here a little bit more. Yep. That's actually, Jazzian, that is a thought in my head too, is what I might switch to eventually. But once, because Shilohs are big, no mistake, and my back's okay, but it has its days, right? But that was a thought when we bought this house. We were actually in the market for a different house that was 2 stories, and the one thing David said, he's like, I don't know about this, and I'm like, I don't know, blah blah blah, and he's like, what about when the dog gets old and we have to bring it upstairs to the bedroom? And I was like, you're right, we're done. Because it was just like, after the experience with Kiri, he had to remind me, because big dog get old, so now we have a ranch. We're perfect. So yeah, at least he made me think of that before we made a decision. It's definitely a thing. And the puppy would be so sad if she couldn't come up to bed. So, yeah. Now we have one story house. Much better. And this house is just great. Like, I'm so glad we got this house. Oh, guys, I forgot to tell you. Our baby orange tree out front is starting to get orange blossoms. We're going to have oranges. Isn't this exciting? I have never owned an orange tree before. It's a tiny little tree. It's only about as tall as I am. Yeah, these were really steep stairs though, Jess, and they were like 2 levels. It did a switchback. It would have been so hard for a dog. They were not really wide either. Yeah, I'm always so excited when our trees that actually, bear fruit. Our avocado tree, I think, is going to take 1 more year before we actually get avocados out of it. I think it's not quite mature enough yet. It's not quite as well rooted as it could be. They had just planted it pretty much when we moved in, so I'll give it a couple of years. Then we'll have avocados. Yeah. Yeah, the orange tree is growing up. I'm just excited. Then we'll have limes, although our lime tree is definitely sick, and we'll probably have to get another one. But our lemons, and we've got limes, and we've got mint growing in the back, and we've got oranges soon. We've got figs. I have to figure out how to deal with figs. And I kind of gave up on the plums. The neighbor's plum tree pretty much everything ripened while we were gone and dumped on our yard. So much for plums. There's a very short window apparently. I kind of wanted an olive tree until a friend told me what a pain in the butt they were. Yeah, well, that's where I used to, that was in Wisconsin. I could never have had one. I don't know if it would have been okay in Texas. Nobody seemed to ever have them. I don't know if there's a heat tolerance level that the tree can't handle. So I'm just bringing up this highlight on the underside here, guys, okay? So you see how that kind of made that look a little bit shinier? Now we're looking at this. We've got our shadow, and we've got our highlights and our reflection. You can see that the highlight takes up the entire top here, but I am going to sharpen it up. Oh, gotcha day. That's a good way to put it. The gotcha day. No, Medzik, I like that. Yeah, what you get. I just ordered a raised bed, like one of those kind of up on legs kind of hammock type springy beds for outdoors. So I'm going to bring that highlight down the middle. I kind of stippling it. I kind of want to suggest the surface is a little rough. And I need to kind of smooth out some of this transition. So how sharp your transition is here is going to delineate how shiny the surface looks. So I need to blend this a little bit better. Not make it quite so sharp. The more it blends, the more soft and kind of burnished surface the metal looks. Mostly treats and toys. Already kind of fat. Yeah, I got it. Christmas outfits. Being an adult is stupid. I agree, Nomad-Zeke. Oh, I feel that so much. I feel that so much when I get excited about something that as a kid I would never have gotten excited about. I'm just like, adulting is ridiculous. Yeah, all mood, total mood. We can still get excited about puppies though. Like that's totally a thing. Yes, soon there will be more puppy pictures. So they call this 2 to 3 week period the transitional period for puppies because they're transitioning from becoming a pod to a puppy. Or as I call them, poopy, because the poop will start to increase from this point forward. This is the practicality of breeding dogs, by the way. When you have to keep that puppy pen clean, you are down on your hands and knees, scrubbing away 4 or 5 times a day. There we go. So we got a little bit more of a highlight on the underside. We've got our highlight here. I want to bring up a little bit more of the white. I think I'm going to bring a little bit of my polished leather into it. I'm still stippling. I still kind of want to make it roll kind of rough a little bit. I won't glaze it. Karinika, we'd never mind photos of your adorbed cats. Like, they are super charismatic. Like, those little devils are super. They would be movie stars if they were humans. Mugging for the camera. There we go. So I kind of put a glaze of the rich leather over the top of this, and it's made it even out a little bit. So it looks a little bit more blended, and I like it a bit more. I'm going to up the highlight here. I think that's pretty good. We never want our under reflection to be as high, as bright as our regular highlight, but we can bring it up a little bit more. Sometimes that's what you need to like emphasize reflection. And since I did emphasize it here, I want it to be kind of the same level. Now we've got a weird cylinder thing to do. These are fun. One of the things that is interesting about this model is that the NMM is so many different shapes. Your childhood is over when you decided your favorite cooking ring. I don't know. There's still a lot of fun things you can do as an adult that you couldn't do when you were a kid. So, being an adult can be stupid, but... Oh, the sun is out now. I may have to close up the house today. It's supposed to be 84, though. I don't know if I really want to close up the house. I might just take my chances and leave it open. I like the airflow. There. So I want to make sure I've got my lines here to set these parts apart. You can see how I've already kind of outlined where my highlight layer is going to go, although I actually, comparing to here, I think I need to bring it down a level. Yeah, and well, in gold, I would be keeping these highlights a lot more yellow, right? Like I'm really just working with kind of a bleached out ochre-y color because I'm using polished leather and just adding white. So I'm more using raw sienna, essentially a color that's much like raw sienna. It's the gold. Like when I'm highlighting, I'm adding an extra drop of lantern yellow to my highlight colors, Jazz. Or you can glaze with this, or actually a better color to glaze with for gold is to use an orangey color, and the perfect one is Saffron Sunset, but I can't figure out where I put mine. It's normally right here in my box, but Saffron Sunset 9247, I think. It's kind of almost marigold yellow, but it's just a little bit more yellow. But it has that orange in it, and I find that gives you a more realistic gold with that glaze. You can also use either of those colors for blonde hair as a glaze. I think Rhonda's talked about that as well. To glaze with an orangey yellow or a yellowy orange, real thin over the top of blonde hair and NMM gold to pop it up. Yeah, always add like if you look at gold has especially if it's really pure gold, it'll have a very yellow highlight, very, very yellow. So using just the ochre or the oxide, much as it gives you an effect, but really kind of working with both of these or mixing them is a better call. Like the NMM gold base is actually a mixture of these pigments. Yeah, the orange shade yellow and the oxide. So NMM gold base has a very heavy load of yellow in it for a reason, and you could even add more. Like I normally add a drop more to my NMM gold highlight for sure, because gold highlights up very yellow and bronze doesn't, which is why I'm using this, because it is giving me more of a bronzy look, right? Because I'm not taking it toward that yellow, because bronze typically doesn't. Brass goes this yellow if it's just got a little bit of tarnish to it, little bit. So brass would go more yellow than this, and gold will be more yellow than brass. And much warmer than brass. Brass has a cold tone to it. Yeah, if you're going for a very vibrant yellow, you can still underpaint with like an essentially mixing an oxide with a white or whatever. But you could also just underpaint with a white mixed with the yellow or an orange or even red if you go with the whole pink to shade yellow thing. Any of those things will work. If you're using the oxide because you want coverage, then just underpainting a first layer of yellow plus whatever, or white plus whatever, is probably just as good. And it won't desaturate. Sometimes you want desaturation. Like Jennifer Haley regularly used yellow oxide or yellow ochre for her NMM, but she did a lot of very cold NMM because she was working with a lot of grayed out colors. She really liked those kind of color schemes. She was known for it. And so she would desaturate everything, including the NMM, to make it go with the muted colors. All right, so let's start raising up our highlights here. Now that I've got them kind of in line with each other. When you've got a straight cylinder like this, you want to make sure that your highlights are all lining up, all in a row. Now here I switched because this is not a rounded shape. This is flat on the blades, so it's going to reflect differently than this rounded shape here, here, here. But all these rounded shapes that lead into each other, they're all going to highlight much the same, and so your highlights should come out in a line. So your under reflection should be in line as well, and your shadow should be in line. Yeah, we've been on. I was pretty prompt today, actually, Babel. That's weird. Sounds like twitchy. Sounds very twitchy. All right, so I've got that nice kind of cutoff there. Now I want my under reflection coming up, and then we'll pop a little bit more pure white. I did a little bit there, and we'll kind of look at the whole thing. And we still have to do the other side, but we'll do it a little faster since we now know what we're doing. We've set it up on one side, so duplicating it. Hello, Dogfather. So I think toward the weekend I'm going to pester Bridget for individual photos of the girls again for the puppies. I think she's back to working now, so I don't want to pester her during the work week. She still sends me some little updates. The last ones have been videos though, and they aren't as easy to see on the stream, so I'll ask her for some pics. It's bringing up a little bit of underside highlight. Remember, we want it to stay in line with what we've got here already. Moved up a little bit and lost my shadow there, so I may need to grab that and bring it back. Originally used Ruddy Leather for that color. I'm just going to put a little drop on my top of my palette and mix it up with a tad of water because you don't really need a lot, you just need that little bit. I do this all the time if I only need a tiny bit of a color for a touch-up. It's very easy to just mix a little puddle here. Yeah. Yeah, I do mix all my secondary highlights, yeah. Like, normally I take my base color and I just mix from there. So, I've kind of gotten into that habit. It's something that oil painters do. Especially with the skin tone portraiture book that I was working with, would do that, where, there we go. Where it started with a base mixture, and then you made it every other color you made by taking some of that base mixture and adding a touch of another color or two colors. And I like that, I like that way it works. Like I do that naturally anyway. I tend to grab some of this and transfer it to a new thing and then add more white, maybe a little more yellow, you know, that kind of thing. So when I'm building, if this was my NMM gold base, I would be taking a couple big brushfuls of this, adding a drop or a partial drop of yellow and a drop of white, mixing that up, making a highlight of it, again transferring a couple of that, then dropping more white into it, and so on. Depending on, if I was working on a very large model, I would probably be building more transitions. Yeah, it's pretty, actually, if you look at this, I described this earlier, Dogfather, when you weren't on, but if you even look at the bones material, just with the light falling from the right direction, in this case, it's picking up light from my window right in front of me, you can see where your highlight goes. And then right underneath that, you just do the same thing. Right underneath that, you've got a dark shadow, and then it blends up to the under reflection. Right exactly what we did here is the same thing we're going to do on the blades here. Now, on a flat blade, on a blade like this, which has several faces, you're going to be repeating doing that. So your upper face, you can see, is all light, but you're still going to have the edges done in pure white. Then you're going to have a tiny shadow right under that, like at the top of this filigree. You're going to have a tiny shadow where that blade cuts away from the light. You're going to bring it back up to another highlight. And again, pretty much almost pure white here. Usually with blades, you'll see people like Sergio like always doing all of the edges in pure white, a real thin line of pure white. And that helps to kind of suggest shininess. And then you're going to put another shadow right under that, away from the light source. And then you're going to bring it up to another under reflection. So it's like when you've got a three-faced sword or spear blade, it's the same as a two-faced. It's just you're doing it an extra time. And your top level also doesn't get a shadow, not nearly as dark a shadow. But it's always the same three rules when you're basically tackling NMM. It's your brightest highlight. Right under that, you've got a shadow, and then you're blending it back up to be a secondary highlight on the underside, and that simulates bounced light coming up from the environment. So highlight, shadow, reflection. Those are the three components. The highlight and shadow give you a shiny effect, and the reflection gives you reflective. Shiny and reflective are the two qualities of metal that you're seeking to show off, to convince the eye that it sees. Then don't worry about it. Actually, Jazzy and Kira, you should not be mixing those reflected colors, in my opinion. Do a normal one, do your normal succession, in which case you only have to add white and sometimes yellow if you're doing gold for your under reflection. And then whatever color you worked with down here that you're having bounce up or bounce over, just take a little bit of that and glaze it over that. You're done. You don't have to mix that color, just glaze. You'll get a better result, in my opinion. And if you're glazing and you brought your highlights up high enough, it shouldn't impact them that much. if you find that it suffers, then you need to bring up your reflected light a little bit more to account, so that you know that that glaze is going to knock it down. Yeah, I don't mix them because I don't see, like, it's the same effect, and sometimes doing the glaze saves you from pigment interactions a little bit. Normally you're going to get the same kind of effect with the pigment interactions, whether you mix or whether you glaze. But sometimes I find the glaze just seems a little more realistic. It makes sense, right? It's just kind of picking up a little bit of color. And because pigment interactions are a thing, but you're trying to simulate the way light works here, it kind of makes sense to play with that more. I mean, glazing is going to play with the light more, and mixing plays to the pigment more in a way. Does that make sense? It's the way I think about it. That's what led me to start doing that. But yeah, if I'm going to put earth reflection or any reflection, I'm going to usually glaze. The exception is in steel colors, where you can absolutely mix and should mix stuff in. But even then I use glazes if I want to intensify the color a little bit. Yeah, it's tinted light, and that's not the same. And pigment has interactions that light doesn't. So sometimes I find it's dicey to mix those colors for precisely that reason. You can end up with a muddier effect than you wanted, and you're like, but it shouldn't do this. But actually, yes, it should. It's pigment. It's not light. So yeah, that's I try to avoid too much clashing between the light color science and pigment color science, since they are two separate beasts. And doing the glaze just frankly takes the brain work out of it. Like, it's just like, then it's like, well, what color did I use down here? All right, thin it way down and apply it. I'm going to bring in some pure white here, maybe with a tiny bit of the metal color mixed in. You can go, you don't have to go like pure white on NMM. You can go just an off-white that's mixed a little bit in with your gold color. And it still works because you still have the contrast you need. Yes, glazing, but glazing is also one of those techniques that is absolutely invaluable in your toolbox, right? Because glazing and layering go hand in hand. I should probably go back to doing a couple of technique videos in my foundations this time. Since I've done brushes and palettes now, I can do layering, and then I can do glazing. Layering, glazing, stippling, wet blending, all that stuff. So now we've got our highlights, and it's all reading really nice down this, and I need a little bit more reflection down here. I don't quite have it high enough for it to read. And just like on everything else to do with 28mm models, sometimes you have to pop your reflection on your NMM more than you would on a bigger model. On a bigger model, you can afford to be subtle. On a small model, you do tend to have to over accentuate just a little bit. This guy's big, so it helps, but yeah, just bringing that up a little bit. Uh-oh. I'm not getting any refresh for sure. Quindy, you getting anything on your end? I'm not getting any indicators from OBS on my end. It all looks good. But yeah, I'd restart. All right, so now our spear is looking very shiny indeed. That's nice. Now let's do it in fast motion, speed motion over here. But first I'm going to take my little bit of my lining color here and darken in this interior. Make sure I've got my lines good on the outside. These look pretty good. Excellent. So, oh, okay. Cool. Thanks, Quindy. Gonna bring in my shadow just a little bit stronger here, since I know I lost it on the front end. So I'm probably gonna need it darker again. And while I've got this color still wet, by the way, the little puddle that I mixed up here, still usable. All right, so then we got our nice shadow line in. It's already looking better, even with that shadow line, right? Now we're going to take our highlight color, which is the polished leather plus white. And we're going to make sure that that pops up over the whole top of this. Because everything pointed up is going to be lighter, right? And I will add, actually, another top highlight. Even though everything up here is going to be highlight colored, I'm going to actually add a pure white highlight on the very top as well. Just a little bit of one, just that top upper edge. Yeah, you can see just a little bit of it. All right, now let's get back to business. Yeah, I'm sure, Jazian. Although it's pretty, I don't know, it's a little cloudy today, so I know we have a slightly higher humidity today than we do normally. Normally we are very arid in the summertime. We're getting a little bit more cloudy. There, all right. So for those of you who studied my cylinders PDF on the Patreon, patreon.com/paintingbig, you know that I've got the 4-stage highlight around a cylinder. So one is right here. One is the highlight I just did on the top. One is the highlight I'm about to put over here. And the under reflection is the 4th. So when you get confused about 4 highlights, there you go. But you have to like go around the model. So now we'll bring this up with a little bit of white plus polished leather. Bring that up a little bit better. Let's see here. I'm going to blend that in a little bit. Just going to muddy the line here a little bit between my shadow and my highlight, so that I get a little bit more of a blended feel from that. Do a little bit of top. This is not pure white. It's a mixture of polished leather and pure white. Just like I did on the other side, kind of doing a stippled line to suggest that the surface is rough. Do a little bit of highlight up down here. Remember to blend it a little bit from the shadow to the bottom highlight. So you don't want to go straight to a near white. And you never want that bottom reflection to be as bright. Now you can bring it close to as bright as your main highlight, especially if you are going to glaze a color over it. Then you do need to have it go up a level, because when you glaze that color over, it's going to knock it down a level. So you want it to even out in the right place. There. When you've got a little detail like this in the shadow area, just make sure to get a highlight to bring up the edge of it. These little holes. You'll still have a shadow. There we go, and that's almost set. Just one more bright highlight and it'll be pretty good. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good advice, Quindy. We used to have to do that a lot with our, before we got our new internet sensor for our computer in the TV room. We had a lousy connection. We were trying to stream stuff. And now back with the pure white, or close to pure white for that top highlight. Yeah, I like them when they play more. I like them when they're a little older than that. This is the age where they start being a lot of work. So you better love them. They have to be cute so that you don't want, so that you actually want to do all the work to raise them. There we go, a little bit of highlight, and now we've got that much faster than we did the first ones. Now, you guys have seen me do it twice. I'm gonna do just a little bit more highlight down here. I feel like I want just a little bit more. And we got it pretty good here. Boom. All right. So if you want to do the spear blade, let's do that. I think we've got enough time to do that. That's more like week 3 to 4. Week 4 is the escape week. That is my favorite age, the escape week. Alrighty, let's get some gray. Medium to dark gray is what I usually start with, mixed with a little bit of color, depending on the model's surroundings. His base seems to suggest he's in a forest, so we could actually use a little bit of green if we wanted to add color to this metal. Or my usual standard is blue. You're not trying to actually change the color of this gray, by the way. You're just trying to make it a little more visually interesting. I've got grave gloom right here next to my station, so I think I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of grave gloom to suggest like foliage and stuff reflecting. Yeah, that's weird. Sounds like they don't have rails that are high enough is what it sounds like. If you've got a puppy that can get out of that on day 4, you need higher rails. All right, so I added just a little bit of grave gloom to the color. It's not enough to seriously shift it away from the gray. All you're trying to do is to make your gray more interesting. When you've only got that black and white pigment in a color, it really does get kind of like it's very monochromatic, and your eye can detect that there's something different about it. So when you're painting NMM, try to add a little bit of green or blue or brown or something, just a tiny bit, into the gray to make it not flat. Otherwise, it tends to read like a black and white cartoon image when the rest of your model is reading like a real thing, and it throws you off. Yeah, I was going to say, any normal breeder would be freaking out if her puppies were exiting the crate on day 4, because they're very vulnerable. All right, so let's see here. Let's add this gray. Now, it's not going to look much different than the gray that the initial bone, so it is lighter, you'll notice. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about that, dog father. Yeah, cancer's hard. We got lucky with Kiri. She beat hers. Big hugs. It's hard. Being a pupper owner is hard. All right, so I'm just base coating this blade real quick with this gray that I just mixed with 4 drops of cloudy gray with just like 1 drop, maybe just a little bit less than a drop of grave gloom. But I could use grave gloom's kind of nice because it's a grayed out green, so it gives me the green pigment without like hitting the gray too much. If you use something like brilliant green, something like or dragon, you'd way shift your gray, and you don't want to do that. So pick one of those weird greens. Yeah, Jazzian is watching a Shiba Inu breeders stream of their puppies. Saw several Shibas when we were downtown in Seattle. Yeah, that's why I tend to do the blue with the gray. But this guy, because he's got greens in him already and his base has forest on it, I thought I would do a little bit something different. Normally I use ashen blue, that's my go-to. And it's also my favorite SCNMM color. As far as the blue on the blue sky reflection. Alrighty. So we're just setting that up. We've set it up. Now we need a shadow. I've got some walnut here, but with steel, I often will like to use more of a neutral, more of a black. We can try to use the walnut though. I use brown liner pretty regularly as it's pretty black. But since the shadows are going to be so small on this, walnut is probably going to work just fine. So I'm going to take some thinned down walnut and I'm going to put in my shadows. I like to put in my shadows first before I do my highlights. So that is not thinned enough, but I'm going to etch it in anyway, really strong. You're essentially going to follow the edge of the blade here. And it's right along the top of these little rune bronze bits, so it's pretty easy. So you've got that dark shadow there. I'm going to take a little bit of my gray and kind of do a little bit of a wet blend. I've got some of the walnut on my brush and I just put some gray on it so I can make a little blend. And then I'll blend it right down here. Although you'll be able to pick up the brown in the color, for one thing, if I've got a forest floor here, I'm going to have brown down there anyway, so it's actually not conflicting. But another thing is that once you shrink down this shadow and really kind of narrow it down, you're not going to be able to really detect the brown color. You're just going to see that it's a shadow. So now we've got another edge, though, to deal with. So you can see that shadow. We've got another edge to deal with right under here. So I'm going to grab, again, some of my walnut. And I'm going to put that edge in. It's kind of rough. Doesn't need to be perfect out the gate because you're going to be blending and stuff. There. So you can see the shadow there and the shadow up top. So this top surface is... and then you've got a shadow under it, then you've got a flat surface, then you've got a shadow under it, and you're repeating that pattern. Here, same thing. We're gonna base coat it real quick. It's messier than it looks, actually. I'll probably have to trim it up a bit. But sometimes when the sculpt is really nice and crisp, you can get that kind of sharp line. Here, if you look at it, you can see that it's a little bit of a muddy line over here with the sculpt, or with the cast anyway. It's probably the cast. But you can see it's nice and sharp here, so that helps. Yeah, having killer brush control does help. That's why I'm like, lining, 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 everybody. Do a lot of lining. Even if you don't like the technique, practice it. It'll help you with your brush control. You never have to do lining again once you have killer brush control. But until you have killer brush control, line. Some models I find myself reaching for lining and others I don't. This one is I'm being pretty subtle with my lining in a lot of places. See the bigger model? I find that the bigger the model, the less I line, or the more subtle I make my lining. Now here we've got a bit of metal that comes in here. This blade is kind of sandwiched between these bronze inlays, so we're gonna take that into consideration. Backside of the blade we're probably going to fudge a bit. It's going to be really in shadow, but we'll at least get our base coat on there. Yeah, Jesse, and that's the thing. Yeah, I saw a golden puppy who actually, while we were eating outside on a patio in Seattle, and so we actually saw all of the dog walkers out with their dogs. And I saw actually a golden puppy being trained to be a very good golden puppy instead of being allowed to run around and jump up on everybody. His owner was teaching him to walk by her side. She had an adult golden on her one side, and they had just come from picking up groceries. She had a bag. So she was juggling two golden retrievers. One of them looked to be about 3 to 4 months old. But she was encouraging him to walk by her by just popping a treat into his mouth every once in a while. So he kept like getting a little bit ahead, and then she would take out a treat and he'd drop right back next to her heel, and she'd give him a treat. So he was learning that if he kept that position, he would continue to get treats, which is like really the way to encourage a heel, like a dog to walk next to you. So she was doing a great job, and he was doing a great job, and they both look happy. And the adult dog was being a very well-behaved golden walking next to her, so obviously she'd had success training this in the past. But yeah, so she was the one person not getting pulled around by her dogs. So she stood out to me. Good job, golden owner, wherever you are. So a little bit there. I could make that line a little darker. I was wet blending a bit. Yes, there are dogs that are not food motivated. Told Bridget I want a food motivated one. You can build food motivation though. Dogs that are not food motivated are typically tend to be more excited by a toy or praise. You need to just figure out what works with your dog. There are some dogs who just do not care, and then you have just let yourself in for a very rough time. Yeah, the key with that dog, I'm learning a bit about this, but essentially the key with the really excitable dogs is you have to work them up to it really slow, and it is a lot of work, and I could see how a lot of people would not do that. They just resign themselves to having that excited dog. But essentially you need to train the dog how to calm itself down. And to do that, you have to do a lot of work away from stimulus, and then very slowly build stimulus, so that your dog slowly learns that it can calm down and that it pays to calm down. Was just reading a bit in my dog training book about that the other day. Yeah, exactly. And having a family, and that's another thing, right? You don't want to give the mouthy, like, super hyper puppy to the home with a lot of chaos in it. It's hard. It's hard to place puppies. Yeah, screaming does not help. Yep. And the owners, yep. Haha, rough time, yes. But yeah. When it comes down to it, is like having a really well behaved dog, no matter what the temperament is, takes work. And I always kind of I was lackadaisical about the work before. This puppy, I'm very committed to the work. I want a dog that's very well behaved this time around. It makes me so tired when I go to shows like our National Dog Show and people are just having their dogs ping-ponging about at the end of their leads. I kind of want my dog to be the really well-behaved dog this time. I've only got one, so it makes it a lot easier. Oh, nice. Yeah, cats can clicker train. Yeah, but I mean, it's hard when you've got a family because then everybody's got to be on the same page with how to react to the dog, and it's not always the case. One of my puppy people had some issues with that, and actually they were homeschooled. This was back in Texas. So I suggested to her that she incorporate a dog training unit into her homeschooling for her kids. And that went over really well because it wasn't math or reading, right? It was actually like fun. And she used it to get the kids on the same page about how to communicate with and train the dog. One of my better moments as a dog breeder was that idea. Yeah, exactly. And it ended up with their oldest daughter really bonding really strongly to Benelli, the puppy. And like they would jog together and, do all sorts of stuff together. So it really worked well. It really did. Because when they got Benelli, the kids were all like 6 years old and lower. But by the time by the time Benelli was like 2, they were all like, they were at an age where they could learn how to tell Benelli to sit and to, do different stuff. So they learned. It was cool. So if you can turn it into a fun thing for the kids, I think that's kind of key. All right, so here, what I'm doing is I'm doing the Sergio thing, the stylistic thing. So I've got an edge here, so I'm going to highlight it bright white. I have the edge here, which I've also highlighted bright white. And don't worry if you're not real precise with it. I'm going to highlight this edge with a bright white. Link those up nice and strong. I'm going to also do it back here, bright white. You also are going to do, and this is a thing where it depends on who you're talking to. Some people will just do the bright white along the entire under edge. And that's like kind of a Sergio style thing where he'll do any edge, he's going to do bright white if it's steel NMM. And even though your under reflection wouldn't necessarily be that bright, it's a style thing. You can do it. But then what I did here is I've got a flat blade. So I'm going to be, just like I did the spear here, I'm going to be putting a dark line underneath that edge. Yeah, that's really well behaved. Yeah, and puppies, well, I think that's a thing, chromatic. Because it depends on temperament, right? Some puppies are going to find it very easy. Like some things will come very easily to them and others will come very difficult to them. And it's entirely their personality. I mean, that's why, not all puppies will graduate from like guide dog school and all that kind of thing, is maybe they have maybe they're just not like that into people, or maybe they're not as sociable, or maybe they don't have a strong chewing impulse. So you find it really easy to train them not to chew stuff. And yeah, or maybe they're really high energy, and so they have a hard time controlling that energy, right? Yeah, I think it's very, I see a lot of parallels between kids and puppies, and from friends who have had both, they've told me that it was very similar, like just figuring out who their puppy was and what they had an easy or hard time with. So darker shadow right under this, but another thing I'm doing here is I'm alternating across the flat of the blade. And this is what you see on swords where people are alternating light and dark. But I want to mostly pick up where the main source of light is coming down here and figuring out where it's going to hit the blade and kind of hit the middle of that. And in the middle of the blade where the light is coming down, I want to make kind of a skittery highlight across the surface. That's why I'm making a higher highlight here. And this kind of violates the whole like, shadow and then build up to a highlight thing. I'm kind of taking it a little bit liberally at that point to style a bit. But you'll see this. If you put the blade of a knife out in the light, you'll see a very strong light hit the flat of the blade and then fade off to either side because it's the sunlight, right? You won't see this in environments where like you don't have a strong light source from above. But where you do, you can make this kind of work, especially if the blade is a little bit out. See how it's kind of tilted out? It's not straight up and down when it's not tucked in. Because it's out like that, it can catch the light and the light can glance across the flat of this blade. It won't take up the whole blade though, because the sun is just like a pinpoint, right, up in the sky. So it's going to be a fairly small area. So I can do this. And it'll be a lot like where you see people doing the bands of light and shadow. And I'm going to try to make this kind of shaped like the axe blade. So I'm going to start it smaller and widen it out a little bit down as it gets toward this edge. It's supposed to fade in. Remember, you're supposed to like have a shadow and then it fades into a highlight anyway. So you're kind of working with that idea. So I'm just mixing my gray and my white to get a lighter gray to kind of bring that together. Right, yeah. Yeah, leave it as a trained. But some puppies have an easier time with leave it than others. Puppies who control impulses, puppies who maybe aren't as food motivated, puppies who are more motivated by interaction with you than with the outside world, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm reading through sections of my book on training leave it right now because that'll definitely be a thing in our house. Although we walked through yesterday and talked about what kind of puppy proofing we were going to do to the house before we get this pup. So you've got that kind of light coming down there. So you do have a shadow, and it is coming back up to an under reflection. Except here it's another highlight, right? Because it's hitting the edge of the blade here. So now we've got this additional shadow, and we're going to bring up a highlight here. But just like above, I can choose to focus that highlight more in one area and fade it off to the side. This helps to kind of both give an idea of the light source to the viewer, and also it helps to make things a little more exciting. So let's mix a little light gray here. I'm just doing spot mixing on top of the palette here for this this highlight, this reflected highlight. So I'm gonna bring up a highlight on both sides, but maybe I'm gonna bring it up stronger here. I'm gonna bring it right up under that highlight there. And again, kind of fade it out. And see how I'm kind of making it go with the axe where it kind of slopes off. It's kind of a little mountain that I'm doing here. And I kind of did that up here too, where it's a mountain and it slopes off. And that mimics the axe blade, right? Because it's a mountain and it slopes off. So I'm mimicking, in the highlight shape here, I'm mimicking the shape of the axe blade. I need a little water. Water in my paint now. Oh yeah, especially for herding breeds, they can get very fixated on a target, and so you may have to work harder with the leave it. There is a book, and it is a lot of work, but it is very insightful if you're interested. The book that I'm going to be using to train my new puppy is called Control Unleashed, the puppy program. The lady who did see you originally did it because she was working with a lot of troubled dogs and dogs with behavior problems, but then she realized that if she put out a puppy one, she might be able to head some of those problems off before they even occur. So it's very interesting, and even if you skip all of her theory and you go straight to the training exercises, she really does a good job of explaining leave it, like how to start teaching that command. She calls it doggy zen, and there are some pre-stages. And it's a very interesting book. It's a lot about canine psychology and behavior and how to work with it to get better results. She does performance stuff, but I think it's useful. I'm not planning to do performance sports with my dog, but I still think that her process is really useful. I'm just finishing up this M&M's. Yeah. I'm sad that she doesn't have a Kindle version. It's only paperback, but that book, I do not regret buying that book. It is the single most valuable puppy book I think I've yet bought for just practical training exercises that will help you to have a great relationship with your dog and also like teach in a way that makes sense to your dog. Kind of teaches you to assess who your puppy is too and to work around that. So there we go. Let me get a little bit tighter here. Oh, nope. Let's see if we can get in focus. There we go. Much better. Control Unleashed, the puppy program, I think. It's not the main Control Unleashed book, which is for problem dogs, but it's her puppy book. Oh yeah, it's very easy. She works with border collies, so she works with very high drive breeds, but she's had all sorts of different breeds, and she has a lot of stories in the book that she tells to illustrate points. And what I actually like most about the Control Unleashed book is she talks about things that like dog trainers will do that she actually doesn't agree with and why. And it makes a lot of sense to me, and it's kind of a good primer for me, like if I do decide to do a puppy class with this dog, of what to kind of watch out for in a trainer and not want in a trainer. Before I sign up for any puppy classes, I typically go to watch a session to see how the trainer operates. So it kind of gave me a good idea of what I didn't want in a trainer. All right, so blend this in. There we go. So now you guys can see what I've done there. Yes, by Leslie McDevitt. Yes. Yeah, highly recommend. Highly recommend. If you can get through the whole thing, it is fascinating stuff about your puppy, just like dogs and development and communication and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it was heavy, but now I'm working my way through it, and I'm really trying to like reread sections if they don't make sense right away, and it's really interesting. She's a very well-known trainer and has had a lot of success. So, and she's all positive. There we go. So a little bit higher highlight there. Now I can really pop this up to white. If I really want the light to show strongly, I'll take my main highlight that's glancing down the face here. I don't quite do as much down here because this definitely is more of a cutting under edge. But definitely on this edge here, on this flat of the blade, I'll definitely take it up to a very strong pure white, and then I'll echo that down here. I'll minimize my shadow a little bit. Cool, Gibson. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he rarely has smooth. Well, he'll smooth it out though with airbrush though. Often at the final stage, Jazzian, when he wants to, when it makes sense. Depends. But yeah, he likes a lot of textures. He doesn't like the smooth stuff that I tend to do. But I like my smooth stuff. And this isn't perfectly smooth. I don't mind some texture in brush strokes. You guys see me do little textures all the time, but with a steel surface, I like it to look maybe a little scratchy, and it does, but I don't like it to be like perfect smooth. So yeah, so we'll keep working with this stuff next time. But then that gives you kind of the idea. It's very sharp. It's very, very bright. You know, I'm gonna hopefully it doesn't distract too much. You can see how bright it is, but then the hoof here also is bright. You can see why I didn't make this hoof white though, right? Because otherwise it would kind of run into this axe blade and it would be confusing. Instead, we've got some various areas on the model now that are going to be bright. I may need to take the horns up a little bit higher and really hit the pure white highlight on those. Let's back out real quick and talk about that. Because color composition, right? Sees flashes of white. It helps that his skin is lighter, and I actually will probably take the highlights up another level on his skin. I was just thinking about that this morning. And I'll probably pop the white up on the horns here, because I went up to an off-white, and I didn't really come up to a pure white, but it might help to pull the attention. So we're going to have a very bright blade out here. We've got the freehand here, which draws the eye. We've got these splashes of white down there. So I feel like we need something. Either I need to stripe the mane, and I might do that. I might stripe the mane with black and white. That could be fun, and it would totally take the eye up here, which is where it needs to be, right? So, yeah. Yeah, then he goes back in, right? Yeah, I mean, airbrushing is just made to do smooth, right? I learned to layer it because that's what was in fashion when I started with my painting, but it's not necessary to do it that way. You can do it any way that it works for you. All right, so there we go, guys. So we've gotten some nice progress on the NMM, both silver or steel and gold today. We still have sections to do. He's a big model with a lot going on. The little NMM on his bracelets and chest and here, these are going to be super fast. Probably this will be a little bit more agonizing because it's got all these squiggly butts in it, but won't be too bad. Yeah, so we'll have at least another few sessions on this guy, I'm thinking. It's working though, and as everything gets all shiny and glimmery, he'll look cooler and cooler. So there we are. Tomorrow is Wizard Day. Wizard Day. We've been blocking in all of his colors. We did some blending on the scroll to get that down. We're essentially bringing in everything and bringing it all along. I'm not real satisfied with his skin right now. I eventually will revisit that, but we're essentially working on bringing this guy all along. Now, at this point, I may actually start highlighting some orange and some purple. I may block in this border on his robes. Maybe we'll do silver instead of the gold. I don't know. I tend to like gold for borders just because I feel like it's very realistic with brocade. Hey, Chaotic tie flinga. Chaotic tie flinger? But anyway, hi! We were just about to end our stream. I'm sorry, everybody. Thank you for the raid. Yes, it's Wizard Wednesday tomorrow. Thank you for the raid. We were just working on our Centaur here. We were doing the axe blade here. And a bit of the non-metallic metal bronze here on the thing there. Tiefling. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I know Tiefling is a D&D race, Valandar. I just totally, manages to... Yeah, woof. Sometimes my eyes and brain just fail me. That's just the way it is. Hey, everybody. Anyway, I'm Anne. I work for Reaper Miniatures. We're here on this stream every morning during the week, painting models from Reaper, obviously. So tomorrow we're working on our wizard here. And today we are working on our big old Centaur. And hopefully you guys will come and find us at some point in the future. Do give us a follow. We have a lot of different shows on Reaper's channel, and I'm just one of them. But yeah, that's... time to raid someone else. Oops. Yeah, it was. I tried to do it, Gibson. I tried to, but I failed. I need more caffeine. More caffeine, please. All right. So yeah, tomorrow we will be doing the wizard. We'll probably be working on the purple or the orange or some gold or something. I don't know. We'll work on something. But today the Centaur thanks you for tuning in. We had a really good time on him, and I think he's turning out really well. So. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you tomorrow morning.